I think we can all agree that Need for Speed stories have always been pretty mid. Like, let's be real here. I know a lot of you guys love to sit and play the older Need for Speed games all day, every day, but you cannot, for the love of all things holy, actually believe that any story we have ever had in any game has been at the very least good. I cannot name one time when a story was actually decent or written well. Between the corny dialogue from villains and other characters, the terrible pacing, and people doing things for literally no reason, I feel like it's time for a change in the formula that they use to give us a story in single player. I mean, how many times are we gonna get our cars taken? How many times are we gonna start from the bottom? It's literally the exact same thing over and over again, rewrapped with a new city and new characters. And half the time the characters aren't even new. So that's a 50-50 by itself. I know that every single Need for Speed game to have ever come out does not follow this formula. Clearly, I'm talking about the ones that do. Some of these Need for Speed games don't have stories at all, and some of you guys like that basic and straightforward type of gameplay. I'm not talking to y'all. I'm talking to everyone who plays the game for the story. Think about games that actually have great stories. Not good, not mid, great stories. We got God of War, Ghost of Tsushima, Elden Ring, The Last of Us, GTA 5, even older games like Infamous 1 and 2. Great stories exist, and yet we have stories like Need for Speed running around. Yes, I am aware that those games are a completely different genre from a racing game, but what does that mean? There's no excuse to why the story mode for a racing game can't be amazing. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe, and let's dive a little bit deeper into what I'm trying to say. I call for us getting away from the Underdog stories, at least for the next 2 games past Unbound. This doesn't have to be a full flip in the franchise, but I really want the games to just make a good story. A story good enough that they continue it for a few other games past the one it initially goes into. Kind of like a video game version of Fast and Furious, where they can build the story up, maybe go a different route, then they get right back to the main cast and continue their story once more. I don't want to see in the comments that they can't do that, because the Need for Speed formula, when they 100% can. If we have game companies out here making deep lore about fake hybrids of animals named Pokemon, then I am positive they can do it with cars. All these games that bring out these new characters over and over again, with most of them having no depth. I feel that energy could be used by making a story that people can follow and truly enjoy. I talked briefly about having a story where the main character does not start from the bottom for once and actually starts at the top. This does not have to mean that the character starts off rich and has all the cars and money. It could mean that they are just the face of the underground street racing league. You can have the infamous title of being the street racing king. You can have the powers of dirty money. All that sort of stuff just comes with being the top anyway. I think that would work great. We already know the struggles of being the underdog and being the one that gets kicked in the balls the hardest for some reason. We all already know the struggle of climbing the ranks and having to fight for positions because it has been done 20 million times already. But you know what we don't know? We don't know what it's like to have everything and then lose it all. I will say we have had a few stories where we do have an established base, reputation, and connections, but guess what always happens? We get our car stolen, or the cops come, or someone betrays us. How about we start at the top and instead things just slowly go downhill due to what the government should be doing anyway, which is cracking down on street racing. Every one of these Need for Speed games has an emphasis on cops and breaking the law, because what do? We're street racers, right? But things are never really done to actually stop the amount of street racing. In a new storyline, we could have someone who is at the top and loses everything, not due to other people for once, but due to the government actually managing to catch the street racers. One by one crews can be brought down either by arrest or going missing. We need to step into the life of someone who truly loses it all and see the gradual downfall of when street racing goes bad. Everything cannot be good all the time. Think about the Fast and Furious series again. We've seen the crew go from pretty much nothing and robbing electronics to making a name for themselves before losing it all due to people coming after them. We already have the times when we come up and rule the racing scene. But what about when we have it all and it all comes crashing down? By the end of the story, the player should be under the impression that the main character is pretty much on their last legs. Another example I could give that's even better than Fast and Furious is the TV show Snowfall. The main character had it all, and then one by one, the dominoes started to fall and things just got progressively worse and worse. He still had his good times sprinkled in there every once in a while, but that is a story that I could feel really changed the game for Need for Speed as a franchise. He doesn't get his money that he lost back. He loses people and they don't come back. There isn't a happy ending. The story doesn't have to be happy or cheerful. That's what Unbound was, and honestly it seems like people had enough of that. Take out the corny dialogue and the stuff that made no sense, like stealing the cars. The story was overall still pretty happy. Everyone makes up in the end and realize they aren't too much different after all or whatever. People just forget that others betrayed them. That's the stuff I'm talking about. Let go of the cliches. Let people die. Racers and cops alike. There needs to be portions of the story where people suffer and aren't just happy all the time. There will always be those sparks of joy where you can forget the bad things that are happening, but reality will always set back in. The reality is that you have numerous government entities trying to lock you away for life or eliminate you off the streets permanently. You are considered a very dangerous criminal, and with all the stuff that has had to happen in order for you to be the main character and be at the top of the racing scene, then you must be on the FBI Most Wanted. I think that the best way to really have fans hype for a sequel and to continue the story is to leave it on a cliffhanger. The main character shouldn't be able to magically just get all their cars back and somehow be free from the cops to continue doing the exact same thing that got them arrested in the first place. Now, there will be a villain, of course, because that's for every game ever, but don't make them someone who does stuff for no reason. That is one of the biggest cliches that a lot of video games fall into, and that really destroys the amount of story to be built and the tension behind actions. What do you think would hit harder? If a villain comes after you and steals your car for no reason, or if you have a full backstory on the villain and it turns out that they do what they do for a specific reason? That way, you cannot exactly relate to the villain, but you can understand where they come from and see how their past has changed them and the actions that they do. To be honest, it doesn't even have to be a single person. It could be a government entity. It could be a series of corrupt officers. But the point is to make them a major plot point for the story and not just what people talk about as a side piece, like the mayor in Unbound. She was talked about so much, but we never see her. We see billboards of her and how she appears to be a tyrant, but nothing ever comes from that. We want to get away from things like that example. Make it so that the main character feels overwhelmed with how much they are outnumbered. Let's not forget that the police most likely outnumber the racers 5-1, if not more, and that presence should be felt with police vehicles around the city and through other people. Nowhere should be safe. Even in hideouts, there is always a fear that things could go left. Another thing is keeping the cast light. Why do we need 10 different characters, bro? Unless every single one of those characters is going to have an impact on the main one and also have a fleshed out backstory to complement the main storyline, then I think it just needs to be a few of them. We don't need the main character, the mentor, the best friend, some random person, the dude who runs the races, the dude who washes the cars, etc. Just give us the crew leads, maybe a love interest, the villain or villains, and the main character. The more characters the story has, the more people tend to tune out due to having to learn yet another person's reason for being there. Think about A$AP Rocky in Unbound. The dude literally had no reason to be there and contributed nothing to the story. It was yet another person we had to be introduced to and hope we got more screen time, yet they didn't. He didn't impact the main character. He didn't give any information on the takeover events or even the grand. He didn't even talk to us about how he got in the racing scene to begin with. We had a brief conversation with him, yet he was the face of the entire game. Let's not make this mistake again. If we need characters where you go back in time and play them as the other character before they meet the main one, then we can do that. In fact, we can have the main game about the first character and then DLCs that cover the lives of maybe a guy who died trying to spin the cops out that were trailing your car, maybe your best friend, maybe your mentor. The point being, we need a better story for these games if people are going to continue buying them. I mean, half the player base, if not more, prefer single player over multiplayer anyway. So why not make it worth it to get the game? People enjoyed Heat's story, but it was too short. People didn't like Unbound's story because it was short and pointless. The team has plenty of ammo to use to make a new one from scratch. Let's get to it. If you enjoyed, make sure to go ahead and drop a like and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video.